Hi, everybody. I want to welcome you to the Resident and Family Support Council that we hold on the second and the fourth Tuesday of every month at 3 o'clock. And we're welcome to all of you here who are joining us today. And I just want to give that shout out to the Illinois Pioneer Coalition for allowing us to use their Zoom accounts so that we can hold these meetings via Zoom. One thing that I also realized that I really should be doing more of is just telling everybody that I'm Lee Moriarty, and I am with the Illinois Ombudsman Long-Term Care Ombudsman Program. And we're here to advocate for those who live in long-term care. And it's very important that we feel that everyone gets empowered with information. So that's what today's meeting is all about, really empowering people with information. And we have Stephen, who's actually going to be leading today's meeting, who is the regional ombudsman for the Quincy area over in the Quincy corner of the world over there. So he's going to be joining us in this conversation today and really leading us through it. So Stephen, would you like to go ahead and take it?
Sure thing. All right. So can everyone see the slides?
No.
No? Okay. Not sure what's going on then. Oh, wait, I need to share the screen.
Stephen, while you're working on that, I'm just going to let everybody know that our next meeting is going to be an open forum. We're just going to have you come with information that you want to talk about, questions, stories you may want to share, or anything like that. And if we have time, I'm going to go ahead, and there are two snippets to two different movies that are out there. One is about some residents that lived in New York that were in a nursing home there during the pandemic. And then the other one is about a family member that did it in regards to her mother. And so they're both very, very empowering videos. So if we don't have much of a conversation happening, we'll go ahead and we'll be showing those videos next time as well. But we do want to encourage conversation to happen during our next meeting. So go ahead, Stephen.
All right, so it's up now?
Yes.
And you can only see the one screen, not two, right?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
Perfect. I like to use presenter mode, and it's not working right now. So, but I have
I see you, and I see you also. So we're good.
Yeah, that works. So today we're going to be talking about advocating for yourself. This is a broad topic, so we're going to kind of give an overview of self-advocacy. Could be, ranging from issues like cold coffee to more serious abuse situations. Not every strategy is going to apply to every situation. And also, I want to note that my presentation is mostly going to be directed towards nursing home residents and not towards other kinds of facilities, though most things are going to apply everywhere. So why self-advocate? You know your needs better than anyone else. You know the situation that you're in better than anyone else. And it is incredibly empowering to advocate for yourself to make your life better. You know that if you do the advocacy work for yourself, you know that is going to stay the same. Your changed situation is going to stay the same even after public health leaves, even after the ombudsman leaves. So you don't have to worry about things going back to how they were as much as if someone else helps you. So let's talk about some of the barriers that people find towards self-advocacy. A lot of times people don't want to be a bother. And the thing with that, if you are a nursing home resident, those staff are there to work for you. They're they have other residents to deal with too, but your preferences are important. A lot of times I hear residents say that it's not worth their time to go after some issue that's bothering them. And maybe it's true. Maybe it's not worth their time. But it's good to at least let someone know, at least let the ombudsman know what's going on, because maybe maybe it's not worth the time of one resident, but maybe there's 15 other residents who are having the same issue. I had a situation a few years ago where one resident told me that, oh, we've been having some issues with one nurse, and went down the line, and turns out several residents were having the same problem with the same nurse. So speak up and let people know, because maybe it's impacting more than just you. A lot of times I hear people say that it won't do any good. You don't know unless you try. And a lot of times, even if you don't get anywhere, you're creating a data point. And a lot of data points can lead to change, whether it's within your nursing home or across the country. Finally, people are afraid of retaliation. Most of the time, the issues that are brought to me aren't going to lead to retaliation. But if that's a concern of yours, talk to your ombudsman. Maybe we can handle things anonymously or systemically. Or maybe it's just an issue that's not going to lead to retaliation. Finally, retaliation is illegal. It can be hard to prove sometimes, but it is illegal. So now let's talk about in-house routes of self-advocacy. There are ways you can advocate for yourself in your nursing home without involving anyone on the outside. So talk with staff. This is the fastest way to a solution, but it's really best for immediate concerns. Maybe your water is just outside of your reach, or you need your feet tucked in a little bit better than what the staff have already done. These are, best for simple one-time issues. It's important to speak directly with the staff who are involved. So if you have an issue with laundry, talking to the CNA is not going to be productive. They're not going to remember to pass on your concerns to the laundry or housekeeping. So it's best to talk to the housekeeping or the laundry staff. And if you can't get them, talk to a supervisor. When you talk to the staff, make sure you know who you spoke to, what you spoke to them about, when you spoke to them, and what their response was. You're going to hear me repeating that a lot. Get that who, what, where, when, how, and why written down. Get a little notebook and write it all down. Another route is to talk with supervisors about your concern. These are going to include people like the unit supervisor or the shift supervisor, the director of nursing, social services, and the administrator. The response time should be fairly quick. If you ask to speak with one of these people, they should be following up with you within a day or so. Talk to these people to address chronic issues, like if your bed is always made wrong, if your clothes are always coming back wet or wrinkled. You can use this to address issues like mean staff, or if you feel like you've been abused or neglected. It's always good in those situations to talk with the supervisor rather than a direct care staff. Also, if you have an issue involving a different shift, take it to the supervisor, because telling a first shift CNA about an issue that you're having with third shift isn't gonna make it back around and fix the problem. Just like when you talk with the direct care staff, it's important to make sure that you know who you spoke to, when you spoke to them, what you spoke about, and what their response was. Filing a grievance. All nursing homes are required to have a grievance policy. Other facility types might have a grievance policy, but it's not required. So in the nursing homes, this is going to include a form, a grievance box, and a grievance officer who follows up on grievances. If you aren't sure where it is, you can talk to the resident council president, or attend a resident council meeting. You can also talk to social services activities or the administrator. They usually know where the grievance box is. Most procedures I've seen, the grievance officer checks the box about once a week, and then they take the grievances anonymously to whomever needs to follow up with it, and that person provides a written response. The grievance officer then takes the grievance to you. Now, if it's an anonymous complaint, an anonymous grievance, I should say, those are usually responded to publicly. So if you've got something that's private or very personal, you probably want to put your name on it. But if you're afraid of retaliation, you can absolutely leave that spot blank. Now, the good thing about this is it creates a written grievance and a written response. And nursing homes are required to keep documentation of the grievances for 3 years. These are sampled by public health on the annual survey. Now, the downside of this is that the records are controlled by the facility. So if you've got a particularly bad grievance, it might somehow get lost. So in some respects, the system lacks true accountability. So when you file a grievance, make sure that you're keeping track of it, documenting the who, what, where, when, how, and why of the grievance. Resident council. This is a monthly meeting for residents. In most facilities, it's staff-led, but remember, it's only staff-led at the consent of the residents. So if you have a situation that's particularly troubling to you as a resident, talk to the resident council president about closing the meeting for a little bit and kicking the staff out. At least for a little while you discuss something that might be troubling to you. If you are a family member and would like to attend, you have to get approval from the council, and just remember that approval can be revoked at any time. The advantage of the group is that you can discuss concerns and see if others are experiencing the same thing. And you can also take issues that you might be having to the resident council president, and then they can present the issues anonymously to everyone. The resident council also creates a written minutes, which can track complaints. But like the grievance procedures, it's often maintained by staff. So it's important when you're there 1 month and making complaints that when the minutes are read the next month, those complaints show up. So there's a little bit more accountability, but not a lot. Another thing to note is that sometimes the staff member who is in charge of being the resident council liaison, they're usually the ones taking the notes. They may not put in all the complaints because they're afraid of being retaliated against. So that might be a situation where if the staff liaison is uncomfortable with taking those notes, tell them, all right, well, we can kick you out for a little bit while we have this conversation, and we'll put it in the notes. And you might bring the ombudsman in and remind the staff that their job is the liaison. They're not putting their job on the line for what the residents are saying. They're just passing the word along from the council to the president, or from the council to the administration. Like the grievances, minutes are sampled by IDPH. So if you keep track of when a concern was discussed, you can direct them directly to that month. Care plans. Last but not least, if you need long-term changes to your care needs or your personal preferences, have it addressed in your care plan. Your care plan is your contract with the facility. It lays out your medical and personal needs and what the facility is responsible for doing in addressing them. The care plan meeting has to be held on admission and then every 90 days thereafter. It can be held on request or after a change in your condition. Excuse me. Sometimes small changes can be made between meetings, but only with your consent. The care plan meeting has to be accessible to the resident and the power of attorney. So if you are a bedbound resident, they should be holding the care plan meeting in your room. And if you love Drew Carey, the facility should have a really good reason for holding the care plan meeting at 10:30. For the three of you who don't know what I'm talking about, The Price is Right comes on at 10, runs till 11. So if you're a fan of Drew Carey, you're going to want to watch The Price is Right. Finally,
can I interrupt for a second while you're talking about care plans?
yeah, go ahead.
So you also have the right to write your own goals and have them put into the care plan. And I'll talk more about that, but I just didn't want to forget it.
Thank you, Carrie. You are absolutely correct. And make sure that you get a copy of your care plan. That way you can verify exactly what is in it, especially if you've added your own goals to it. And again, it's like a contract. If they don't live up to their part of it, they can be cited for it. If you feel like your care plan isn't being followed, you talk with a supervisor, talk with an ombudsman, or you could file a complaint. But we'll talk about those in a little bit. Ask questions. When you're working internally, in-house, always remember to ask questions of staff. Ask questions specifically when you're dealing with complex issues. And if something comes up that you don't understand, ask them what they mean by that. Refer back to your care plan. Ask them how an action fits in with your care plan. You know, if you or your loved one are chronically dehydrated and the care plan says they're supposed to give water, ask them how often they're bringing water. You know, are they encouraging your loved one to drink? Sometimes that can make a huge difference. You can request medical records. The resident and the healthcare power of attorney have the right to request these records, and the nursing facilities are required to provide them within 2 business days. Now, they are allowed to charge a reasonable fee for these records, so be aware of that. You can look over the records. When you're looking over records, ask about vague entries, especially vague entries that are close to an incident of some sort. Most entries are going to be quickly written, but if you have an incident and the entry around it is vague, chances are something was left out. We had an incident a few years ago. Resident had dementia, and she was looking out the window for about 10 minutes. Eventually, she walked outside. I mean, she'd been telling them for 10 minutes that she wanted to go outside by standing at the window. So she went outside, and the way it was documented was that the staff attempted to redirect her and the resident attacked. The resident hit the staff. But my staff was there that day, and she saw what happened. The resident went to walk outside, and a staff came up and grabbed her from behind. If you're in a strange place surrounded by strangers and someone grabs you from behind, what are you going to do? You're going to attack. It's perfectly logical and natural response. But being grabbed from behind was left out of the notes. So when you see something like that, where it says something vague, like they attempted to redirect the resident, ask them what redirection means. Now let's move on to outside routes of self-advocacy. The Ombudsman Program. Ombudsmen are resident-directed advocates. We work for the resident, not the facility and not the family, strictly for the resident. We won't work on issues unless the resident gives us permission to work on the issue. So if you're needing advice on how to resolve an issue yourself or advice on the direction you need to go, you can talk to the ombudsman. And we
receipt right here.
Sorry, was there a question?
No, I think Stephen, someone just didn't have their microphone muted.
Okay.
I'm not going to see it, I'll mute it.
All right. So if you need advice, we can give you feedback, and you don't have to worry about us going in and talking to anybody. We can also work to facilitate communication. I've seen situations where residents and staff are not on the same page at all. And since I'm outside the situation looking at it, I can sometimes see where the breakdown in communication is and help get everybody on the same page. We can also discreetly investigate concerns. So maybe you feel like you're the only person who has a concern, but we can go room to room and ask residents if they're having issues with the food or having issues with the staffing. And if we find multiple people with the same issue, we can bring up the issue anonymously and systemically to the administration. Finally, ombudsmen create documentation outside of the facility. I'm not going to claim that it's perfect, but the important thing is that it's not controlled by the facility. We can't share any specifics without the resident's permission, but if you end up filing a complaint with public health, let us know and that you want us to share information with them, and we can absolutely talk to them. Cindy, I see your hand up.
Yes, excuse me. My name is Cindy Malik, and I am the community ombudsman for the Rock Island County area. And I just wanted to give an example of how a resident utilized myself, but then also was empowered to handle a situation herself. I had a resident that was at a supportive living facility, and the policy there was that they could have pets, but only if they had the pet prior to coming to the facility. This resident, though, had a signed doctor's order for an emotional support pet, but the facility would not allow her to have that pet. The resident contacted me. I was able to get the Housing Assistant Animal Integrity Act for the resident, a copy of that, as well as giving that resident a referral for Prairie State Legal Services, which then that resident went ahead herself, contacted Prairie State Legal, and she was armed with that Assistant Animal Integrity Act. And once that happened, the facility then allowed that resident to have that emotional support pet. So it was kind of a dual situation where they did contact the ombudsman. We were able to provide some resources on how to have them handle that situation themselves. So I wanted to just make sure I gave that example to everyone.
That's a great example, Cindy, that really is of somebody being empowered through getting information so that they could advocate for themselves. That's really, really great. Thanks for sharing.
Yes, thank you for sharing that. So moving on to the licensing and regulatory agencies. Now for nursing homes, that's going to be the Illinois Department of Public Health. For anything else, there should be a link in the chat that will show you what your licensing and regulatory agency is, depending on what facility type you're in. You can file a complaint with public health, and let's see, I already said that. Sorry, I'm reading from notes. So this is going to be best for your chronic or most serious concerns. A cold cup of coffee is probably not worthwhile to file a complaint on. But if your food is chronically coming in at the wrong temperature, or your mom says that they shoved a sock in her mouth, those are things that you could file a complaint on. And something to note, if you're a mandated reporter, you have to call in all reasonable abuse allegations. For public health, you can phone, fax, email, or mail your complaint in. If you're having any difficulties with filing a complaint, please contact your local ombudsman. Now,
Hey, Stephen, I'm gonna jump in here for a second.
Yeah, go ahead.
So when it comes to filing complaints, public health, when you're on their website, there's a link that says click here, but there's also an email address on the actual complaint. You are always better off using the email address than you are the link, because first of all, with the email address, have your documentation that you've done it. And from experience, the link doesn't work half the time. You're much better off just emailing your complaint. Go ahead.
I agree absolutely. That especially with the documentation part, because you can look back in your email and see, when did I send this email, and there it is. Now the downside with public health is this is going to be usually the slowest response time, depending on the severity of the situation. If you've got an abuse situation and you are still in danger, you're probably going to see a surveyor within a couple hours, because the response time for those is how long does it take to get the surveyor to the facility. That cold cup of coffee I was talking about, that could take a month or more. Complaints can lead to change. A substantiated complaint usually requires a plan of corrections. So in other words, the facility has to explain how they're going to correct problematic behavior. More serious situations can result in a fine. Now, a complaint that is not substantiated can still create change, because the facility may recognize that even though they weren't caught, so to speak, they still need to modify what they're doing in some way to make things better for their residents. So it can lead to change either way. So some things to include in the complaint. This is just a list of examples. Your resident name, the facility name and address. That is very important, especially if you live in, say, a continuous care retirement community, or if you're living on a street that has just a row of several nursing homes. You definitely want to include the name and address. Information about any witnesses to the event, names of employees involved, important dates. Be very clear on your specific allegations. So was there an abuse, infection, medication error? It should be very straightforward for the surveyors when they're reading this note. And I can tell you, I've received written complaints from people, and I've had to read it 3 or 4 times to try and figure out what their complaint is. So please be very clear. Include when the incident occurred, including the date and time if you can. Where did the incident occur? How was the resident harmed? And how was the complaint addressed by the facility? If it was addressed at all. And on the note of witnesses, that can be very powerful if you have witnesses to an event. I had a situation where a resident was hit by a door. Staff was opening the door to the staff room and hit a resident. Resident fell down. The way it was documented was as a fall. Nothing was going to be changed. Well, I got a couple of calls from witnesses, came in, talked to the resident, talked to the witnesses, went and talked to the administrator, and the administrator said, no, she just fell. Look, here's the documentation. And I said, no, I've got 2 witnesses that said she was hit by this door. And now not only do they have a sign on the inside of the door warning staff to look, but they also have a mirror across the hall so the staff can look and see if there's anybody there. So it's very important if you've got witnesses to put them down too. Document, document, document. So the best thing you can do to help yourself is to document. When you file a complaint with public health, they have to be able to confirm the complaint in order to do anything about it. So the more information you can give them, the easier it's going to be for them to follow up on it. I've had residents tell me that the blonde nurse was rude to them a couple of weeks ago. Well, I walk out into the hallway and there's 2 blonde nurses and a blonde CNA on this shift alone. I can't do anything about that. I go to the administrator, but there's no way that we can narrow it down, and it could be an agency nurse from 2 weeks ago. So get as much information as you can. That again, that who, what, where, when, how, and what the impact was. Was it discussed in resident council, and when? Was it addressed in your care plan? Keeping records is going to help you focus the complaint and give people guidance on where to go and what to look for. So if I know that it was discussed in resident council a month ago, I can go and ask for those records and look through those minutes. If the surveyor knows that you talked to the ombudsman about it, if you've given me permission to talk to them, they call me and I can just say, here's what they told me. So documentation helps you to create a case to work within the system. So now I'm going to turn it over to Carrie, who is a family member with just a little bit of experience with advocacy. Just a little bit.
So, hi, probably most of you know who I am. Stephen has slides here for me, but I really think we're just going to shut the slides off and we're going to wing this because
Sounds good.
most of those slides were actually done years ago. Some of them are still accurate, some are not. But I think I have more to teach people just by talking, some days at least. Self-advocacy works, whether you are the resident or you are the loved one. If you continue and don't give up, is probably the absolute most important thing I can tell you. By pushing and pushing, I actually managed to get an essential caregiver law passed in the state of Illinois. I'm now pushing and pushing with public health to get rules and regulations put in place because the law went into effect on June 30th, but nobody knows it because it's not a regulation yet. That being said, technically, a facility is still required to follow it. You know, we have to advocate for ourselves and for our loved ones. And it will work. You know, we've learned that public health doesn't solve all the problems. I have a very good friend who, I don't even know how many complaints he filed in the facility he used to live in up in Chicago. I filed complaints. Kelly worked with him, Lee worked with him. Nothing any one of us did was getting us anywhere. He finally filed a complaint with the Illinois Guardianship and Advocacy Commission. And I'm going to give you guys all these websites links in a minute. They found the facility non-compliant and that he was correct. You know, by this point, he'd already moved out. It didn't fix the problem, but it also, you know, it made it aware. It's now public record. It didn't fix his problem, but it will fix somebody else's. I've learned that no matter how much we all advocate, that sometimes you've got to give them a solution with the problem. we've had a minor issue that's repeated a few times at the facility my son lives in. And I realized that nothing I was doing was getting anywhere. And it was an issue that would bring me running in the building at 3 and 4 in the morning, not being very happy. And I've done it multiple times, a handful at least over 10 years. So I finally asked our executive director and our director of nursing, I'm like, next time you guys have staff meetings, can I speak? Can I explain to the families or to the staff why this is a problem, what risk there is? So last week I did 6 mandatory trainings at my son's facility, going over why it's important we answer a phone at 4 a.m. And just because that's not your phone and it's hanging on a wall in the hallway doesn't mean you don't answer it. I also explained to the staff, what do I see and what do I hear when I'm in the facility? And I will tell you, my son is truly in one of the best places in the state of Illinois, and I'm very lucky. And it's a Medicaid facility. But just like everybody else, we have problems. Okay. It's inevitable. They can't fix what they don't know is broken.
Mm-hmm.
And, going to your facility is your first step. Going to your ombudsman, going to public health, depending on how it needs to be done. We also have learned that if it is a systemic issue, it takes some time, but if you can get enough family members or residents to speak up, even if it is only with the ombudsman, you can make a difference. There was a facility in Stevens region that had major issues. And we together, Stephen and I set up a family council forum, and it took us probably over a year, but we finally got it to where we were able to do anonymous surveys, and the families had to do it. The facility wouldn't even mail them for us if we paid the postage. They would do nothing to help us. So we had people standing in the parking lots, passing them out, and it's a large facility, and we managed to get a fair number back. But that fair number produced enough that we had the documentation for Stephen to go back in and to meet with their board of directors and to meet with enough people that the issue actually stemmed from their executive director, and they finally got rid of the guy. And from what I've heard, it is better. I mean, there's a lot of families that moved loved ones out, one that was actually forced that never should have been forced out, but you can make a difference. Besides the Illinois Ombudsman Program, there's a lot of places that you can reach out for help, for information, for whether you're trying to learn more about your facility that you're in, or if you're trying to learn more about, how to advocate, and the bottom link is not correct. I will fix that in a minute. Everything else on this list is correct, though. There are ways to do this, and there are people all over the country willing to help you. The rules and regulations are, depending on what facility you're in, are either federal or state. When Stephen was talking about care plans, every 90 days, all of that information only applies to skilled nursing facilities. My son is in an intermediate care facility for adults with developmental disabilities. That rule doesn't apply to us. It doesn't apply. Ours are required annually. Assisted living is required upon entry. And then after that, a lot of times it is an issue of getting another one done. But a resident has a right to ask for it. The family has the right to ask for it, especially if they're POA or guardian. But don't give up. Keep asking. When I said write your own goals, I write at least half the goals of my son's care plan. I make them remove goals if I don't agree with them or he doesn't agree with them. It's really important that we advocate. Prior to COVID, I thought I knew a lot about nursing homes and the rules. I knew nothing. when COVID hit, I realized how uneducated I was. I kept telling people, basically they locked my son in prison. I live 2 blocks from where my son lives, and we bought a house on purpose that close so I could be there every day. And no matter how hard it was for most people, it was your spouse, it was your parents, it was your aunt, your grandmother, whatever. This was my kid. No matter how old he is, he's my kid. And that doesn't change. And it was very difficult for me. And I went on a mission to learn everything I could learn. And it started with Stephen joining my Illinois Caregivers for Compromise group and truly helping educate me until I met Lee and I met Kelly. And I kept going to the point that people all over the country know who I am. Some love me, some hate me. I don't really care. I'm going to change laws. I'm going to help fix a broken system. And we cannot fix this broken system if people don't speak up, they don't follow through. And so, like the links that I gave you guys, they just roll too because I want to see them as I'm going. So the Long-Term Care Coalition, if you want information about your facility, you want to know what public health has gotten them for, you want to know how they're rated, you want, that's one of the best places to go besides the federal government's Care and Compare. My friend Janina's sitting right there in the middle. She actually is on working with people all over the country, starting family councils in facilities across the country. So there's, those kind of people. The National Consumer Voice is another one. They're there to help residents advocate for themselves. They can help put you in contact with others. Gray Panthers out of New York does a lot of national work. I'm actually on their board. And they have turned nursing homes and long-term care into their mission, actually worldwide now. And we do a webinar once a month that goes from everything from having directors of facilities speaking to sometimes we're just talking to people worldwide. Last month we had a couple of people from the media on helping discuss with people how to keep the issues in long-term care in the media. And we were very lucky. We had somebody from New York Times give us their time to come speak to help people understand it. The Open Doors and Reality Poets. First of all, these guys are incredible. During COVID, they used their GoPro cameras and just kept filming things in their long-term care facility. They're in one of the probably largest facilities in New York on Roosevelt Island. They're also in a 1-star Medicaid facility. And they worked enough that PBS worked with them to publish a documentary about what went inside that facility. And every one of us dealt with something that these guys show. That some people have a little hard time watching it. First of all, the guys, they don't care what they say. So you can think of a bad word, they drop it 40 times, but that's okay. These guys were they all wound up here, most of them, because they were gun violence victims of their own doing earlier in life. But they had learned already that they couldn't continue that life. Actually, it put them there, but they also learned how to start working with the public, and the community of Roosevelt Island itself took care of them. The movie is incredible. The link to the actual movie is right there for pbs.org. The next one down is the link for the other movie that is called No Home for Old People. Is that right? Did I just say that right? But it's
No Country for Old People.
No Country for Old People. Thank you.
No problem.
National Consumer Voice is actually helping them get it public or done. It'll be a 4-series docuseries, and there's a lot of clips and pieces of it. And it's a really, again, difficult movie to watch. Theirs isn't only on COVID. There's what's going on every day in some facilities across this country. Again, the more we educate, the more we can advocate. And you know, especially when you go back and watch the guys from the Reality Poets and read stuff on their website, they were not willing not to speak up from themselves. And they were going to make somebody listen, and they truly did. I don't know how to stress enough to people that it's the documentation. You know, I said when we started Illinois Caregivers for Compromise, and we were writing letters and we were contacting our facilities and all over the state, we were going to, but it was all about document, because at some point we were going to need it for something. You know, it was the same way Stephen and I were able to fix the problem at the facilities that he had. There's, if nothing else, reach out to any one of these organizations and ask somebody, how do I get help? The only link that I didn't put up there for some odd reason is the Illinois Caregivers for Compromise Facebook page. It's not near as busy as it was during the pandemic, but I still look at that page every day. If somebody posts that they have a problem, I will follow up with them and I will direct them to the help that they need if I can. I have no problem arguing with a facility for somebody. I've done that more times than I would like to admit. But whether it's our loved one that's in there today or one of us that is going to need long-term care in 10 years from now, we have to fix the system. And it's not all bad. There's a lot of good, but it's hard to find the good. And the more we all are involved, better we can make every facility nationwide. Okay, Lee, go ahead.
No, that was very really, Carrie, thank you so much for everything, because we really do appreciate all the advocacy work and the voice that you've brought to people. And I think one of the things by hearing Carrie speak is the empowerment. You know, that's what this is about right now. And not worrying about people being your friends, like you said. It's about your loved one. It's about you. And it does, that fear of retaliation is very, very real. We understand that completely. If you do feel that you're being retaliated against because you're speaking up, I've heard family members say my relationship changed when I started speaking up more with the administration about what was going on. And one thing that I always like to try to do whenever I'm having any conversation with anybody is bring them back to that human level. You know, if you feel like you're being retaliated against as that family member, as that resident, say, I live here, or my loved one lives here. Do you know how hard this is for us? This was not in our plan. I just need you to listen and understand my point of view and what it is that we need. I need this now because this is my life. And if it was you in your life, I would hope that somebody would listen and want to listen to you and want to make your life better. And you have the power to make my life good or to make my life bad. And I pray to God that you choose the good side. And talking to people like that sometimes can help slap them into reality, because there is those pressures. I need to get to this meeting. I need to do this. I've got IDPH walking in the door. We've got to prepare for survey. We just had a fall. We've had all these things happening. And I think sometimes people who work in long-term care just get caught up in the momentum and not in the people. And we need to bring them back to the people. And they need those reminders from us. We've got to remind them that we care about the people who live there. And it's up to all of us to do this better. Ebony, I see you've got your hand raised. Do you want to go ahead and unmute yourself?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, this is not, hold on 1 second.
Yeah. I feel you.
So
Okay.
why Ebony's, there she
Sorry
goes,
about
Emily.
that. Y'all. Sorry about that. The
But
CNA walked in. For
okay.
those of
every
you who
little bit
don't
is
know,
tangled.
I am a resident in a nursing facility, and this is not meant to be a criticism or anything, but I mean, what was said is nice in theory,
Mhm.
but impractical in reality. And to from my point of view as a person in a nursing home that has had to deal with social services and filling out grievances and them not even following the proper process for a grievance and having to fight them with that. I've worked with my ombuds, who was Jennifer Randall, and even the regional ombuds, Bernard Cobbins the third, on this. We have been fighting against this facility from, I don't know, for maybe about 5 years now. It's a ongoing long process that that's ridiculous. More recently, just to give you an idea, I was retaliated against. I was body dumped in a hospital by the facility simply because I raised awareness about the temperatures in the facility being too much. During the hot days in August, my room solely got up to a temperature of 86.7 degrees. And I reached out to the owner and said, hey, I need you to fix this. It's a problem. And I thought that we had a relationship because we'd been having meetings with the owners, myself, as well as the Institutional Rescue and Recovery Coalition, and my ombuds, Patrick Brentley. We'd been having meetings with the owner to try and make things better for residents in the facility. However, once I became sick because of the temperatures in there and I had to go out to the hospital, they immediately sought out a plan to bar me from the facility, to keep me from coming back. And that's exactly what they did in retaliation, because they got pulled into court with the city and they got tags from IDPH. And IDPH was in the building for weeks after this happened. And the state came in and it was just ridiculous. So in theory, yeah,
Yeah. I
see
hear
it
ya.
going that way, but in
Mhm.
practice, that's not how it goes.
And
Well-
unfortunately, we know that.
Mhm.
And that's even more why we want people to speak up, to advocate. I will help anybody. I have one advantage over the ombudsman. I don't work for anybody. So I'm not limited on what I can say and what I can do. I don't care who I make mad. I managed to nail the director of CMS publicly at a conference 3 weeks ago. And I didn't care what he thought. He was going to hear me out. And 3.5 years ago, I would never have thought to do that. And trust me when I tell you, the man knows who I am. And he was not thrilled when we were at this conference and he realized I was the person standing in front of him. You could tell it in the look on his face, but oh no, I'm in trouble now.
Good for
We
you.
have to.
That's why.
And you know what,
That's-
especially a resident, Ebony, I'm sending you a direct message with my cell phone number.
Don?
Like I said, my other friend that was in this facility in Chicago, I went all the way to CMS with his issues. Unfortunately, we weren't able to solve everything, but the more attention we can bring on these facilities that aren't doing it right, the better chance we have of helping them and fixing them. Lindsay, your hand is up too.
Before Lindsay goes, can I finish this thought?
Yes.
I was saying all that to say maybe the next conversation should be, what can we do when we don't have residents that are willing to stand up? Because anyone who knows me on this call knows that I'm a fighter and I do not care. I've protested at the corporate office of the facility I was in order to get changes made. So I don't care about speaking up. But what do we do when no other resident will speak to back up the claims that are made? So maybe that could be the next conversation that we start to have. Okay,
That's
sorry
a,
about
that's a
that,
really
Lindsay.
great idea.
Yeah.
That's a great one, Ebony. Thank you.
So let's
And
take,
that kind of goes back to like what Stephen and I did.
yeah. So we only have a few more minutes left. So, Lindsay, what was your question or comment?
So my name is Lindsay Sullivan, and I am a former resident of 7 different facilities over 7 years. And I just want to echo Ebony's point that retaliation is real. And I experienced severe retaliation for speaking up for myself, for trying to advocate for myself for correct medications, for, speaking out for, changing of rooms erratically. Things that a person would think is simple and like to the point of like this is human and like part of residents' rights. And we I work with Ebony in the Institutional Rescue and Recovery Coalition, and part of what we're trying to do is really bring a bite to retaliation, bring something so that retaliation truly is illegal. And it just really is a sad story that we're still talking in this day and age about things that is parts of our basic humanity.
Mm-hmm.
And it
You
is.
know?
So I feel like I did forget one thing, and it's something I've always tried to tell people. We're all trying to fix it. We feel like all we do is complain 24/7. Please, please, when you see something that is good, or a staff member that is good, or something that is done right, speak up, because I've learned we are so, as hard as it is, we have to work with the facilities. And the more they don't see us as the enemy, the more they're going to work with you. And a big part of that just comes out of when you see something right, tell somebody.
Yep.
It makes a huge difference in the end of the day. So Lindsay and Ebony, I've sent you both my cell phone numbers. I would be interested in talking with you if you feel like it. Whenever, text me or call me.
And thank you for that, Carrie. Thank you for being able to help and reach out. And I think, and we all are just trying to figure this out from our point of references that we have. And it feels very discouraging at the end of this conversation right now as we're talking about empowerment. And that's not the intention. We don't want people to give up the fight. It's a good fight.
Yep.
And it's something that we have to be able to continue to do. We need all of us on this call to be the ones to do it. And if we keep making it, what I've been doing this for 35 years, the norm has been the leaders of the pack are the people who work there, not the people who live there. And we need to flip that. And so we've got to, it's a change does not come quickly. We need to make sure that people truly understand that they wouldn't even have a job if it wasn't for the people who live in long-term care. And to make them understand that this is what we're human beings that deserve to get the care. You deserve to get care, good care, excellent care. And we've just got to keep honing down that message to people. And I just want to encourage everybody to keep going down that path.
Yes, thank you, Lee. I agree 100%. It's all about keeping up the good fight, and and not backing down when you feel like you've been repressed or retaliated against. So I think that's going to close out our meeting for this week. I know Lee, you have to head out right now, so we won't have any time for any more questions, but feel
Well,
free.
I can stop recording and we can see where that lands us. How about that?
Okay, that sounds good.
And Carrie, I just sent you my number.
Yeah, I see. I just actually screenshotted it. Thank you.